You can't laugh at that.
Steve, where are you broadcasting from today?
Inside of a priest's study.
Okay.
As you can see, there's a prepubescent swim team with Speedo's picture right there, and then I've got Jesus over here. So, and then Joe, and then Jake, Father Joe. Yeah.
I take it this is from a video that you shot in the last week or two?
I did a screenshot before we went on the air here.
All right.
I did a screenshot. I was editing some things, and this is a sneak peek.
I'm glad that
it's a sketch about Karens that are going to get exercised. They're a Karen that's going to get exercised.
And we need that. You know,
right.
She's got to work on her cardio. Never mind. That's Florence, y'all. I was thinking,
that's where my parents live.
Okay, yeah, because I remember, because I listened to your album and you made mention of that water tower.
Yes, and there, I don't know if I mentioned on the album, but there's a minor league team that was called the Florence Freedom that they had voted to rename the team, and so they're now the Florence Yalls, and their mascot is a legit waterhead. It's the water tower head that just walks around.
Is it? What a claim to fame. The place that I'm from is known for their water tower.
They have a Wikipedia page. I was doing the first West Coast show that I did in California at El Cid. I started going into that bit, and I was a little trepidatious. This was the first show out west that they were going to find the humor in it or have any connectivity, just any relatability to it. And as soon as I mentioned the Florence Yall Water Tower, there was a good 10 people in the audience that knew exactly what I was talking about, not being from Kentucky, just had driven through Florence.
That's crazy.
The home of Michelangelo.
How would you like it if your hometown was known for one thing and one thing only?
Racism. Wait, what?
Yeah.
The water tower is racist. Actually, I drove through Richmond, Indiana. Mm-hmm. They have a water tower when you get there, and it says "a great all-American city," and it's like, well, that's a little pretentious, Richmond.
All-American. Do you think the people feel ostracized when they're Middle Eastern driving through there, and they're just like, "That water tower's not for me"?
Yeah. Next,
not my water tower. Chicago. Yeah, it's crazy because the history of improv, especially just even looking at Chicago, there is Second City, which I will try to condense this because I want to do a history of improv. But Second City,
Del Close and with Second City they used
Spolin.
The fantastic book. And that was just to get kids who were part of the workhouse, getting them reacclimated to playing with one another and being children when they had to start going to school. Yeah, the history of improv is amazing, but as far as a business, which Shauna Halpern was great at, and as far as she wasn't great at because she dipped her toes in some issues that she shouldn't have, but Del Close thought that they could use the improv they were using in rehearsal for Second City to make a show. He's like, I think people would want to see this. And Second City was like, no. And he's like, well, I'm going to start it. And then went out to San Francisco and started a group there, which then came back to Chicago for Improv Olympics. But the idea of yes and Mick Napier and the Annoyance Theater, which Mick Napier is a son of Second City, is okay, the rule is yes and, but sometimes you can break that rule. It's
no but.
Yeah, no but then make it interesting. And because Second City is an Improv Olympic is all about making your partner look good. Mick Napier and the Annoyance Theater dissects it even more of if you've reached a level doing the rules of Improv Olympic, if you've plateaued, then you can start breaking the rules, which then elevates you to a different level.
Because you got to create conflict, right? Or you can. And if you keep yes-anding, you're not going to create conflict as easily.
That is the Second City rule, is any scene you should start should be at the most interesting moment in the day or in this situation / conflict. So if this day is the day that your car breaks down on the side of the road after you picked up your mother-in-law from the airport, I don't want to see you driving to the airport. talking about picking up your mother-in-law. Have the scene start when the car broke down with your mother-in-law and you in it.
Right. Yeah. We don't need to see the world before. We need to start at the inciting incident.
I haven't thought about
You'll
that.
go.
As far as stand-up goes, I think that is a good reflection of self-editing, where word economy, you should get rid of the extraneous words and start. And I'm not even good at, like, as much as I preach when people are like, what's the best rule or note you can give to comedians, I say about word economy, and I still struggle with that myself. And I even know how to do it, where you write it out and then you start Xing out the words that you don't need that still make the bit read like it's in English if you are an English-speaking comedian.
Speaking of poetry, I want to dive into your bit. Sometimes the segues don't work. It's fine.
Like stand-up.
Yeah. Speaking of poetry, something that has nothing to do with poetry, the bit that we're going to talk about that you did, I think this sticks out. I listened to your album Dad Bod, which you can find on Spotify and anywhere.
Spitting Image. Dad Bod is the name of the DryBar special, and the only insider baseball with that is they had to be named two different things.
Okay.
And because my DryBar came out before my album came out, I had suggested Spitting Image for them, and the image that I used for my album, which is a picture of me, which I didn't even think of this at the time because I think it's so many years removed that it just wasn't in my zeitgeist anymore, is me with a beard with a baby holder, and my baby is very much The Hangover in Zach Galifianakis. It had that picture for like 8 months, and it was like, yep, that's going to be my album cover or my DryBar cover. And it wasn't until after it came out they're like, oh, is this an homage to The Hangover? I was like, oh no, but you were right.
Well, it works. Yeah, I know. I had that exact thought too. I was like, oh, this is very Zach Galifianakis. Okay. I just figured it was a little tribute to a comedy classic. So the bit is actually. All right.
Hey, did you know that?
I didn't know that.
What's crazy though is like people are like, I'm like, hey, watch, get the DryBar app. There's like 1,000 really good comedy specials from not just comedians you haven't heard of, like comedians you have definitely heard of on that app. And they're like, yeah, but what's the catch? I'm like, there really is zero catch. There's zero ads. You download the app, you watch them. There's no commercials. I don't know how they make money, but they do.
Donations from the Church of Latter-day Saints.
Oh yeah, that's some interesting stories. We were at an Outback. It's like our end of the vacation dinner, and my mom started
establishment.
yeah, in Florida, you know, because. But that's our family too. Like we spent a week in New Orleans when I was younger, and we had 3 out of our 5 meals at a Burger King. And I had to talk my dad into going to a French bistro. All I wanted to do was sit outside at a French bistro, very New Orleans. And so one day he broke down from the badgering of all of us as a family, and we went to an indoor French restaurant. And it smelled like there was gas leaking. The food gave us all food poisoning. And my dad was like, this is why we go to Burger King only.
Proved his point.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like he's like, let me pick the worst restaurant I can find. But
I feel like that's the most challenging thing for a lot of comics. I mean, a lot of people just in general, because how long do you go through life like trying to be somebody that you're not in order to get XYZ or in order to be accepted by the pack? And and then, you know, you're expected to get on stage and just be this individual, this unique individual. And it's hard to make that connection. I think.
And when people don't know, and when people are coming to see you like me, I have credits that I use to hopefully comfort people to come see the show, but I don't have name recognition where people are buying a ticket in masses because of I'm going to see Ricky Glore. And so there's that kind of softness of like, say like a Brian Regan or a Jim Gaffigan, where people are going to see Brian Regan and they're going to see Jim Gaffigan. And a plus side is they've built a fan base. The negative is, does their comedy have to be as sharp, or can they get away with being a little looser because they're coming to see the personality and what that person has to say in relation to what they've said before?
Yeah, they definitely have a lot more wiggle room. That's for sure. Brian Regan was just in Cleveland a few weeks ago, and he was working out all new material, and it was I got to see him one of the nights.
Working out that white hair.
Yeah. He made that. I mean, that's how he opened it.
Oh, nice.
I mean, obviously, you got to draw attention to the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And he did that. But it was really interesting to watch him kind of work through jokes. You could tell that he was telling for the first time and really enjoying that process on stage. But you could have put that in one of his specials and people still would have enjoyed it because it's just authentic and interesting.
It's comfortable. It's the reason why people love situational comedies, even though there's a great amount of redundancy in them. There's a lot more negativity in the afterthoughts of like Friends. Yeah, there are people that didn't like Friends when it was on, but there is almost a cool kids club of the black and white opinions now of like, Friends was awful. Look how repetitious it was and blah, blah, blah. And like, that's how I felt about Big Bang Theory, where I'm just like, oh, there's a redundancy of this. But there's a reason why people like that comfortability of humor, of like seeing Brian Regan. Like you said, they could have filmed that when he did it in Hilarities for the first time, and people would have been like, yep, this is great, because they just want to see him. And as long as he isn't deviate, that's where the Gaffigan thing right now is hitting some of his fan base, is they're like, oh, I thought I knew you. And now you're saying something that I don't jive with, like, but it was always there.
Yeah, he went on a retreat and came back with like a deep found spirituality, and it's like, I thought I knew you.
I thought I knew him.
Yeah.
I don't know him at all. Is he gonna talk like this for the rest of the show?
Yeah, if he would have done all of his tweets in that voice, people would have been a little more comfortable.
Is he doing this?
I don't particularly care for the Nanette special, but it's not my place to.
It's
true.
It's subjective of like, it's subjective and objective, where the stand-up comedians, people always want to ask you, who's your favorite stand-up? I like watching stand-ups and comedians that are nothing like me. Yeah. Those are the ones that I like. I love watching John Mulaney and like the wordsmith that he is and the way he approaches things. I like watching Sam J. Like, I like seeing things that aren't reflective of who I am and what I'm doing. I don't want to sit in a pool of watching a bunch of things that are the echo chamber, right? Which we love, of social media and arts. Sometimes the echo chamber is nice, but a lot of times it's more fun and funny to see a different perspective.
Right. I like a challenge. Don't tell me everything I already know. Yeah. Why are we agreeing with each other just back and forth? There's no room for growth there.
Yeah. I did have a joke about my wife, how her and I have rules in bed and one of us has to fart. Later on in the joke, I say when she farts, she gets a surprised look on her face and turns into a little geisha girl. And then I kind of acted it out. And this was 2 years ago. And I don't remember who it was, but someone was like, that's kind of offensive. And I was like, really? I was like, well, I'm a heterosexual white male. So me saying, I don't see why it's offensive doesn't matter. If one person thinks that, there's probably others, and that doesn't support the joke in any way.
Yeah.
But Okay, so Pete Holmes and John Mulaney both have multiple bits in different albums and specials towards the end where they characterize meeting a black person, and then they do the voice. I've never heard anyone other comics say that they think that is possibly problematic. But then I've also noticed both of them have stopped having those being tent poles in their albums and their specials anymore within the last 5 years. It's like Mulaney, his first 3 albums, I think he does a bit that is similar. Like, so what do you guys think of that?
Oh, black vernacular? Like
Just acting out a character. And like, even it's like Mulaney talks about an interview where his mom pointed out in The Comeback Kid, where he does where he meets a black hooker in Grand Union Station. And she's like, well, that's the same character you did in your last special. He's like, no, Mom, this is a woman, and this is a completely different encounter that happened. I'm just saying what she said. Do you think there's is it problematic for him to put on a quote unquote black voice?
It's tough because you don't want to, it's weird because there's a reality to it. And this is, I think, the crux of it is, are you admitting that depending on if you're doing it in a realistic way or in a caricaturized way, but and obviously doing realistic is so subjective. And no one can just be like, that's realistic and that's not. Because if you're not from that group of people, you can't really make that call per se accurately, like perfectly. But are you, and say it is realistic, which is, again, hard to pinpoint. But is that suggesting, when people say that's offensive, are you just suggesting that they don't sound right? Like, is there something wrong with the way they sound in real life?
Right.
You can flip that
That's
on its head.
the crux of it. Are you suggesting that?
And then
that
are you saying,
bad?
or is it the audience? Is it on the audience to be like, well, not all people of color, whoever it is, if it's Indian, black, whatever, sounds like that. This is just how this person sounded, and it's maybe
dominant dialect of America. You don't want to call it white either, because that's
right.
That's problematic in itself.
Yeah, and so and you are making it larger than life version for the theatrics of it. But yeah, so I think the reason why I brought that up is I can't remember the joke, but I used to do an act out of my brother, and I did play it more effeminate than he was, and it was after telling people that he was gay. And me personally, oh no, I remember what it was. It was my creationist bit, where I finish it off after I do my creation joke about the Kentucky Creation Museum. I say the Creation Museum, one day it wasn't there, but then the next, bang, there it was, just out of thin air. And the audience sometimes is split. Either, I don't know if it's because of a religious joke or what. I go, that was a creationist joke. If you don't know what creationism is, it's basically God was a gay interior designer. He came down to this blue marble and he said, put a river there, put a tree there. Ooh, cavemen, have them ride those dinosaurs. I'm done. And so for a long time, I don't do the bit anymore, but mainly because I retired it because it's on my album. But my brother was like, why does the interior designer have to be gay? Why do you say gay interior designer? And I'm like, for the flamboyancy and the act out. And he's like, why couldn't it just be interior designer and you don't have to put a sexuality on it? I was like, I don't know, maybe there's some poking of the bear by me saying God is a gay interior designer, because people be like, oh, God's not gay. But I'm also saying it's the creationist God and what they believe and how he put things together. Like, I don't know. There's just a lot of ways to dissect it, where if I'm able to dissect it, does that justify it? Or is that just me coming up with excuses for why I want to do it and perpetuate a stereotype?
God, you could write like an entire thesis based off of just that concept with that one joke. Counter arguments and all those things.
But that's what I'm saying, and that's the same for what I think in the John Mulaney thing. And then am I justifying, because then that joke becomes before Eric, the gay brother story, that then am I saying without saying, oh, I can say this because I have a gay brother? Kind of like that old, like, oh, I can say this because I have black friends that say it's okay.
Yeah. I think a good way to have done that is like, you know, make God one of the guys on Queer Eye and then impersonate one of them. And then there's no like, oh, I'm just being, you know, so
being the person who is this way, because we're all agreed that they look. I'm doing an impression, a characterization. I'm not creating this person out of the ether.
Right.
Gay people exist.
That's the name of your book. Gay people exist.
Gay people are a real thing. It's like if you were like a woman as an interior. A lot of straight men are not interior decorators. So you have two options. You have gay men or you have women.
Yes. Stereotypes all come from somewhere.
So it's like, and you could go for women, or you could just have a gay interior designer, and that's just a thing that exists.
Being sketch lovers, I always appreciated Kids in the Hall, the way they portrayed women, because then there's the trappings and the pitfalls of characterizing a woman to be one kind of shrill woman with every woman that you characterize. I keep on saying that word wrong. On stage, where like when I'm my wife, I do the same voice every time that I talk as her, just so people know that that is my wife who I'm then talking. That's the vessel I'm using to say this through. But yeah, it's so hard because you want to be considerate of you don't want to perpetuate any white male closed-minded thinking and have this mob mentality, this herd mentality for the audience. And I say this because I do a lot of breweries as well, which are a lot of 30-year-old white males. Yeah. But I don't want to alienate. An interesting thing was doing a lot of breweries with a guy who used to open for me, where he would kill. There was some racist elements in his rhetoric and some sexist elements that weren't forefront or like hard hitting, but they were definitely there. And he would destroy in breweries. Him and I did the Cobra Lounge in Chicago, where it was a younger, hipper audience, a more diverse audience. And he ate it. He ate it hard because they picked up on, oh, you're a little racist. Oh, you're a little sexist. Oh, your whole act is predicated on being an older white male, and your observations are of the people that you deem less than. And so they didn't give him the clearance or the relatability that a brewery crowd in the South or East Coast would.
Yeah, I think it's all about the level playing field. You know, if you're going to have undertones like that, like you better damn well be self-aware of what you look like, how you come across, and find the funny in that, and like punch down on that too. Also,
are they laughing at the stereotype? Are they and are they going, ha, what are they laughing? Are they like, ha, gay people are interior decorators and they're dumb? It's not like they're like saying they're dumb. Or, you know, that's a really simplistic way to put it. I don't know what the right word would be, but like repulsive is probably the extreme, but something like where it's like, oh, gay people, but it's like, if that's a stereotype, but they're not laughing at anything disrespectfully, they're just like, oh, that's just another stereotype that we have. That isn't an offensive stereotype per se, you know. It's like anybody, being an interior designer, that's stupid. No.
And if they're offended, like different brewery crowds, what's I think funny about being offensive, and it's like what we were talking about Zach Wyckoff, where some audiences that are religious who would align themselves to their ideology with faith with him sometimes do clench because they think he's mocking them, where he's not. He has just found a humoristic way to talk about what he is passionate about and what he believes, where most of the time the getting offended isn't from, especially the majority of the audience that they do it from, they're not getting offended that I am doing an act out of a stereotypical gay person. They're offended that I would say God is gay.
Yeah.
which is interesting in its own way.
Yeah, that's not part of that
offensive.
prayer.
Yeah.
God is gay. God is good.
Gay people exist.
Yeah.
They're being offended is offensive in itself, as
Yeah.
you know. So it's like it's weird how that works.
Right. It's like an offensive inception.
There's just a
Yeah.
top spinning and it's just
Yeah.
going wee woo the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
The rule-
we're all guilty.
The rules of comedy, like I was saying before about improv, you know, there's so many unspoken rules that the kings and the kingmakers will sit on their thrones and bookers or whatever, and if they see you do that, then you're written off and forever they'll think of you that way, of like, you don't wear shorts or open-toed shoes, or like, you don't wear short sleeves, don't wear a leather jacket. And then there's like Gabriel Iglesias, who wears flip-flops, shorts, and a Hawaiian shirt on stage all the time and is owning it, whether you like his brand of comedy or not, or his evolution of what he's turned into. But then there's the overthought of like, okay, what is my brand? If I'm wearing short, and it's like, no, just think, what's your comedy? Your primary goal also shouldn't be to show us how funny you are. If you're going up on stage and that's your impetus to get on that stage, masturbate at home. Like, your goal should be to go on stage and entertain. That should be, and do it from your point of view, which is great. And that's what makes you unique and hopefully will make us like you. But like, if your goal isn't to make the audience laugh, if your goal is to make your 5 friends in the back or the other comics to impress, that for me writes you off, because those are the same comics that call out an audience not laughing as hard. Like, oh, well, last night the real audience really thought that one was funny. You guys must have been bussed in from whatever bad city that is connecting.
Yeah.
Australia.
And that gets oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the audience is like, like, oh, awesome.
Be funnier.
Tell us some more stuff.
Yeah.
Berate us more for giving our time and money for you, or 2 drinks.
Yeah.
Like, connect with the audience, man.
Yeah.
That's what you got to do. You can't tell, like the guy that you open for, or that opened for you.
Open for me, yeah.
Open for you. Yeah, you're not going to be able to get away with the same stuff at a brewery in the middle of a field as you are in a big city.
Oh man, it ruined his night. And like, he did that thing of desperation, of then he really tried to get on their side, but like got sweatier, started talking faster. It was almost the guy who thought he still had a chance of getting laid, and it was like, well, what can I do? Can I'll be that? You want me to be? I'll do this. And the audience was just turned off even more.
Do you want me to juggle? I can juggle.
Yeah, I love you. This is our first date.
I think
We
the
haven't even
biggest-
gotten our appetizers.
The most magic that can come from comedy, in my opinion, is when the audience is completely enthralled with you. Like, if they're like just in love with you, you're just like unstoppable, as long as you're still funny, obviously. But it's like, that should be your goal. And I don't do that enough. I really should, but I
I'm
wrote
the
that
same.
down just now as a note.
That is, though, what I said. My biggest challenge of the voice is I am sarcastic, and I've listened to like Ron Funches and Patton Oswalt, who have said, you know, like, as I evolve, I think it is a more mature thing as a comic to talk about the things you love and approach it from that way. It's a young comic thing to write down a bunch of things that you hate or dislike. And I'm like, yeah, maybe. But then I battle of, I want there to be the likability, and like, yeah, I do talk about being a dad and being a husband and pop culture, horror movies and stuff. And like, but I don't know if I'm going to be cynical. Do I have to be cynical from the jump? And is that how I have to approach everything? Or are people like, oh, but wait, he's kind of shifting gears? Or like Brian, Seinfeld. He has changed over the years, but one of my favorite observations of Seinfeld came from Bill Burr's episode of Comedian Cars. Bill Burr's like, people don't get when you make your observations and you're trying to sound like an everyman, like, oh, I'm connecting with you. Oh, we all notice this thing. And He's like, what you're really doing is you're talking about things that piss you off and how stupid people are, that they don't realize that they're doing these things. He's like, you come from such a place of anger, but then act like on stage that you're just like everyone else, where you despise those people. And Jerry is laughing because he knows it's true.
Yeah.
But so he has cultivated that persona where his last special, again, regardless of what your opinions are of him, I felt like I could see the delineation in that 23 Hours to Kill between the stuff he'd been doing for 10 years and the stuff that was a little bit newer or fresh. And maybe I'd be wrong if I were able to ask him, and he'd be like, no, I've been doing that stuff just as long. Like, I felt there was more energy and excitement to do what I thought was the new stuff. And the new stuff seemed more of the, yeah, I'm rich. I don't care. I'm not like you. Your most exciting thing of the year was coming to see me. You're a Thursday to me.
Yeah. His affability, there's that cognitive dissonance is where he's talking about all these things that he hates and that annoy him, but he never just overtly is like, I hate this thing. And his delivery is very like, it almost seems like, isn't this weird? But really, yeah.
Haven't you ever noticed this?
Yeah.
I have noticed that.
That's actually what my comedy is. Like, if I'm doing it well, I come off like I'm not being like super cynical about things, but I criticize the hell out of everything. That's all I do is I criticize things.
Mm-hmm.
But making it as fun and as lighthearted as I can.
So and I feel like where it would seem like I would connect more with the dude bro husbands or whatever who also think these things are ludicrous about their wives or girlfriends. I connect more with the females because they're slapping their husbands and they're like, I do this. But I set up before I start talking about the stuff about my wife that irks me, of being like, a lot of comedians will talk about their wives and their significant others, and they'll be like, women are different than men. I'm going to do that too. First thing I don't understand. And like holiday candles, about how we have to switch them for different seasons and why can't we just keep Christmas candles? Like, then the wooden home signs that say like home is where the heart is. We got a bunch of them. The way my wife approaches horror movies, she loves them and has the same reaction every time a dog enters a horror movie, and she's like, they better not kill that dog. I'm like, they're going to kill that dog. And like, it's gonna, like, we know this is going to happen. But then there's a whole more bit with that. But when talking, like, my wife at one point was like, before we had a kid, you should have paid me because you'd have no current act as the comedian you are now if it weren't for me. And like recently during pandemic, she bought, we got a big package from Amazon, as we're getting a ton of them more during pandemic. And I opened it and it was an outside welcome mat, but it didn't have any writing. It was just designs. And I was like, oh, you got a new welcome mat? And she's like, well, not really. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, well, actually, the welcome mat lays on top of that. I was like, you got a welcome mat for the welcome mat? And she was like, you're welcome for the new material. And like walked away. But she said, she's like, I just don't want you to ever on stage say that I suck or that I'm a bitch. Like, I'm okay with the observations of our lives and stuff. Seth Meyers in Lobby Baby does a whole chunk where he does a character version of his wife doing stand-up about him, which I think is a lot of callbacks and doesn't work on its own, but it works in conjunction with the stuff that he just did. And I think that's a really nice approach, which kind of plays into the idea of not saying that everything sucks or that a person sucks or being cynical, because then he's turning it and being like, look, I know I'm an idiot too.
Yeah. That's an important part of it, because if you're just berating other people the whole time, the audience isn't going to like you.
Yeah, if you're just bashing, it goes into the same thing with the gay stuff earlier, where if you're just being like, yeah, aren't gay people stupid and they act like this, and doesn't that annoy you? Then it's like, no, but I'm liking you a lot less.
Yeah, I don't You've given me no reason to listen to the next thing you have to say.
Yeah,
You've
it could be
proven to me.
It could be the funniest thing, but so that's almost like it's not as harsh of a crime, but I not to derail, but I just thought of it because I'm working new material, and unlike the note that we're supposed to follow by law, where you don't do your new material in your first 10 to 5 minutes, I do, because that was the easiest thing to replace when working my new set, because I didn't like my opening stuff as much. There's a bit that I'm doing that I know if I can get louder, or what people would view, or as I would say, start sounding like Chris Farley, like punctuate, like being loud, like on something or whatever, I know I can get a laugh even though the bit isn't 100% working yet. Is that okay to do while you're working it until it does get to the place it needs to be, and then you can start playing with levels more? Or is that a hindrance because you'll never truly know how well the bit is working because it's just the inflection you're putting on it?
Yeah, I mean, most importantly, get a laugh up front,
Yeah.
So even if it's a new bit, like if it got a laugh the first time you tried it, it's like, oh, this, because when you come up with a new bit, if it's going to work at the beginning of a set or not. I have a few things that I do. I have like 3 or 4 different bits that I'll do at the beginning of a set, even if they're not fully worked out. Like even, it introduces me as a person. It proves to the audience that I can be funny. And
I swear this isn't a trick. Yeah.
You establish that trust, and then you can work in the newer stuff. So I'm with you on that. The unwritten rules of comedy.
Gays exist.
Yeah, gays exist. If we've learned anything here today, it is
gay people
that...
exist. It's hard.
Listening.
Like the unanswerable. Oh, sorry, are we still recording, or are we just chit chatting?
No, we're recording. It's gone.
Okay. I'm not like I was gonna say anything like, hey, make sure that we're not recording anymore because I'm about ready to unleash some really controversial stuff. No, I was just gonna say, I do learn, but always pontificating on like questions of like, well, how could this be better? It's still hard. It's the never-ending struggle for me, because even with social media now, of like what I said before about branding, where that's clubs now want to be like, well, what's your Instagram and Twitter following? And I'm like, I don't know, because it's really hard for me to feel so egotistical of being like, I need to capture this moment and then I need to put this on. Does that moment jive with the branding that I am perpetuating? Like, I just want to be like, can't I send you a 5-minute clip and some credits and that be good enough?
Right. I would like to feature for now. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. With clubs. Or now, God, the thing with clubs is, well, it used to be before pandemic, was, we don't do auditions or showcases here anymore for features or headliners on off nights. What we do now is we have to see you at a festival. So it's like, so I have to submit to a bunch of different festivals, hope that you're there, hope that you see me, and shell out how many hundreds of dollars or even thousands after lodging and stuff to go do this festival where you're not paid. Oh, here's another one. How much do you think contestants get to be on shows like America's Got Talent?
Settle.
$0.
Yeah. No, they get...
Because
they get a hotel.
Yes, they do get lodging and they get their airfare. But they don't get paid. The only thing they do get paid is if they win, because of FCC rules. Is if there's a cash prize, you can't be paid scale. You can't be paid. And so I get the exposure, but if your exposure is being on a show that's competition and then you don't make it to a certain round of the competition, wouldn't that be bad exposure?
Yeah, it's like, he's not good enough.
Yeah, Like, oh, he's going to be at a comedy club soon. Wait, didn't he get like knocked out in the second round?
Yeah, he's not as funny as that blind pianist.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and the acrobatic acts of like jumping through fire, and then there's the impressionist comedian.
Yeah, Batman's watching that, and he's like, "I hope this one's family dies in this."
Yes.
All
Otis,
right.
my young boy. Need a new one.
Special thanks to Golden Ox Studio. You can find Golden Ox Studio for all your podcasting needs at goldenoxstudio.com. Hit up Jeremy. He is fantastic to work with, a professional. He makes podcasting easy. And if you've been kicking the tires on starting your own podcast, definitely give Golden Ox Studio a look.
If you'd like to weigh in on today's topic, follow us on Twitter at YouCan'tLaughPod, or like us on Facebook at You Can't Laugh at That, and tell us how you did laugh at today's topic, or how you didn't. This is all about the conversation, is what I'm saying. All right, bye.